Image 1. There's a room in the city of Heraklion on the northern coast of Crete, where the oldest face in Europe looks out at you from behind a pane of glass. Image 2. She's painted on plaster. The pigment is 3,500 years old. Image 3. Her hair falls in dark ringlets along her jaw. Her eyes are lined in black. Her lips are parted as if she is about to say something. Image 4. And she's been about to say something for 35 centuries, and no one has ever heard it. Image 5. Archaeologists call her La Parisienne, the Parisian woman. Image 6. Because when they pulled her from the rubble of a collapsed palace in 1901. Image 7. She looked so startlingly alive, so unmistakably elegant, that the excavation crew, men who had spent their careers around the silent dead of antiquity. Image 8. Stopped working. They just looked at her. Image 9. That is what the Minoans do to you. They stop you. Image 10. This is not a myth. This is not a legend. Image 11. This is not a story the Greeks invented to explain something they couldn't and oppose to understand. Image 12. This is a civilization, the first civilization on European soil. Image 13. That rose, flourished, traded across 3 seas, built multi-story palaces with indoor plumbing. Image 14. Painted their walls in colors that still burn after 3 millennia. Image 15. And then vanished so completely that for 3,000 years, not a single person on Earth knew they had ever existed. Image 16. Greece did not know. Rome did not know. Image 17. Every scholar who built Western history on the foundation of Athens had no idea. Image 18. That Athens itself was standing on the shoulders of something older, something stranger. Image 19. Something that had already solved problems Greece would spend centuries trying to figure out. Image 20. We found them in 1900. One man, on one hill with a walking stick and an obsession. Image 21. His name was Arthur Evans, compact, sharp-eyed behind wire-rimmed spectacles. Image 22. His linen field jacket already dusty at 7 in the morning. Image 23. The ivory handle of his walking stick worn smooth from 40 years of use. Image 24. He was nearly blind without his glasses. Image 25. He had spent his career hunting the origins of writing, the deep roots of the alphabet. Image 26. The place where language first hardened into permanent form. Image 27. He had a theory that somewhere in the Eastern Mediterranean there was a civilization older than Greece that no one had found yet. Image 28. He bought a hill on Crete. Image 29. Within 3 weeks of breaking ground, he knew he was right. Image 30. Within 3 months, he understood he had found something that would rewrite the entire first chapter of European history. Image 31. He called them the Minoans, after Minos, the legendary king of Crete whose name the Greeks remembered the way you remember a nightmare. Image 32. Vividly, incompletely, with the persistent sense that something important happened that you cannot quite place. Image 33. And in that first frantic season of digging, among the frescoes and the storage jars and the collapsed corridors of the great palace at Knossos, a colleague handed Evans a photograph. Image 34. It had arrived from another site, Phaistos, on the southern coast, 60 miles away. Image 35. The photograph showed a disk of fired clay, palm-sized, the color of old bone. Image 36. Both faces of the disk were covered in symbols, stamped in a spiral, moving inward toward the center like a question pulling you deeper. Image 37. 241 symbols. 45 distinct signs. Image 38. A script unlike anything Evans had seen. He looked at it for a long time. Image 39. He could not read it. Image 40. He could not read it in 1908 when it was excavated. Image 41. He could not read it by the time he died, in 1941, after 30 years of trying. Image 42. 120 years later, neither can we. Image 43. That disk, the Phaistos disk, the most studied and least understood object in European archaeology, is where this story ends. Image 44. But it is also, in a way, where it begins. Because the Minoans left us that disk the same way they left us everything else, brilliant, beautiful, and just beyond the reach of our understanding. Image 45. Pay attention to this, because what they left behind is extraordinary, and what happened to them is a warning. Image 46. To understand what the Minoans built, you have to first understand what they didn't and Apos, T-build. Image 47. They didn't and Apos, T-build walls. Image 48. Not a single defensive wall around a single Minoan city. Image 49. Not a fortress, not a watchtower, not a moat. Image 50. Archaeologists have excavated every major Minoan settlement on Crete: Knossos, Phaistos, Malea, Zakros. Image 51. And at none of them, not one, is there any evidence of military architecture. Image 52. No battlements, no kill zones, no elevated positions designed to slow an advancing army. Image 53. In the ancient world, this is almost incomprehensible. Image 54. Every other Bronze Age civilization surrounded itself with stone and paranoia. Image 55. The Egyptians built garrison forts along every border. Image 56. The Mycenaeans, the Greeks who came after the Minoans, built walls so thick and so massive. Image 57. That later Greeks, finding them abandoned, assumed they had been built by giants. Image 58. They call them Cyclopean walls, because no human being, they thought, could have lifted stones that heavy. Image 59. The Minoans looked at all of that and apparently decided, no. Image 60. Here is what they built instead. Image 61. Knossos, the largest palace on Crete, the center of Minoan civilization for 600 years. Image 62. Covered 2.5 acres of the Cretan hillside. It rose at least 4 stories in places. Image 63. It had over 1,000 rooms. It had a theater. Image 64. It had a throne room with a gypsum throne still in place when Evans found it. Image 65. Still seated in its alcove after 34 centuries, as if the person who last sat in it had only just stepped out. Image 66. It had a drainage system, pipes, fitted clay pipes running beneath the floors. Image 67. That managed sewage and rainwater with an efficiency that most of Europe would not match again until the 19th century. Image 68. And the walls. Every corridor, every stairwell, every ceremonial hall was covered in fresco. Image 69. Not the stiff, formal art of Egypt, figures in profile, eyes forward, every gesture prescribed by religious convention. Image 70. Minoan frescoes move. Image 71. A young man hurdles over the back of a charging bull, his body arched in mid-flight, fingers grazing the animal and Apos, S-horns. Image 72. Dolphins arc through an Aegean blue sea. Image 73. A procession of women in saffron robes winds through a grove of olive trees, their faces turned toward each other as if mid-conversation. Image 74. As if you could step into the fresco and hear what they and Apos re-saying. Image 75. These were not paintings made for gods. They were made for people who lived in these rooms. They were made to be looked at. Image 76. And here is what the people who lived among them looked like. Image 77. The woman Evans called La Parisienne was not alone. Image 78. The frescoes at Knossos and across Crete show us hundreds of faces, women in elaborate ceremonial robes. Image 79. With their hair arranged in spiraling curls, wearing gold jewelry and bracelets of hammered copper. Image 80. Men in kilts, athletic and lean, their long dark hair tied back. Image 81. their skin painted in the red-brown that Minoan artists used to distinguish the men from the women, who were painted in cream and white. Image 82. Young acrobats, the bull leapers, training for a ritual so dangerous and so central to Minoan religion. Image 83. That it appears on objects found from Egypt to mainland Greece. Teenagers, male and female both, running at a charging bull and vaulting over its back. Image 84. Not symbolic, not metaphorical. They actually did this. Image 85. The skeletons of Minoan adolescents show the specific healed fractures, ribs, collarbones, forearms. Image 86. That you get from being thrown by a large animal. Image 87. They leaped. Image 88. Toward the thing that could kill them. Image 89. And they landed on the other side. Image 90. Hold that thought. It matters later. Image 91. The Greeks called their power a thalassocracy, from the Greek thalassa, the sea, and kratos, power. Image 92. A sea empire. Image 93. Not an empire of conquered territories and garrisoned cities. Image 94. An empire of routes, of relationships. Image 95. Of the ability to appear in any port in the Eastern Mediterranean and be known, and trusted, and feared enough that no one challenged you. Image 96. Minoan trade goods have been found in Egypt, in Syria, in mainland Greece, in Cyprus, in Turkey, in the Levant. Image 97. Minoan-style frescoes appear on the walls of palaces in Tel Eldab and Apos, and in Egypt, 800 miles from Crete. Image 98. The pharaohs knew their name. The great trading cities of the coast knew their ships. Image 99. And their ships carried something the ancient world ran on: tin, copper, the raw materials of bronze. Image 100. Whoever controlled the bronze trade controlled the age. Image 101. For 300 years, the Minoans controlled the bronze trade. Image 102. All of this, the palaces, the frescoes, the trade routes, the bull leaping. Image 103. The women in the ceremonial paintings who appear to hold more religious authority than the men. Image 104. All of it was administered and recorded. Image 105. Thousands of clay tablets, found at Knossos and across the island, covered in a script that Evans called Linear A. Image 106. Linear A is not Greek. It is not related to any writing system we can read. Image 107. We have hundreds of tablets. Image 108. We have enough material that if we could find the key, a bilingual inscription, a translation, a Minoan Rosetta Stone, we could crack it within months. Image 109. We have not found the key. Image 110. We have their accounting records, almost certainly. Their palace inventories. Image 111. Their records of grain and oil and bronze. Image 112. We have, perhaps, their prayers. Image 113. We may have their literature, their history, their version of what happened to them. Image 114. We cannot read a single word. Image 115. Here in Apos, that's what most people miss. This is not a gap in the record. The record exists. Image 116. It is sitting in museum cases on Crete right now, waiting. Image 117. The Minoans wrote things down. They kept records. They had a bureaucracy sophisticated enough to manage a trade empire spanning 3 seas. Image 118. They were literate in a world where literacy was the rarest of luxuries, and we are illiterate in theirs. Image 119. A civilization so advanced it outpaced our ability to understand it. That is what you are dealing with. That is what Arthur Evans found in 1900 on a hill in Crete, and spent the next 40 years of his life trying and failing to fully explain. Image 120. He was not alone in that failure. We are still in it with him. Image 121. So here is where we are. Image 122. A civilization rises on a Mediterranean island around 2000 BC, before Rome, before classical Greece. Image 123. Before the alphabet, you are reading these words and exists. Image 124. They build palaces 4 stories high with running water and drainage systems. Image 125. They paint their walls with dolphins and acrobats. Image 126. They sail to Egypt and Syria and are received as equals. Image 127. They develop a writing system sophisticated enough to manage an empire. Image 128. They produce art so vivid that the men who dig it from the earth 1,200 years later mistake it for something almost modern. Image 129. And then, something happens. Image 130. We are about to go into the part of this story that most history courses skip entirely. Image 131. The part that changes how you understand not just the Minoans, but every civilization that has ever believed it was permanent. Image 132. If this is the kind of history that moves you, subscribe. You'll want to be here for what comes next. Image 133. In the summer of 1967, a Greek archaeologist named Spiridon Marinatos drove a truck down a dirt road on the island of Santorini. Image 134. And stopped at a field that looked like every other field on the island. Dry, volcanic, unremarkable. Image 135. He was tall, white-haired, his reading glasses pushed up on his sun-darkened forehead. Image 136. His khaki field clothes already dust-colored before he stepped out of the truck. Image 137. He had a theory that his colleagues considered eccentric at best, delusional at worst. Image 138. His theory was that somewhere beneath this field, buried under meters of volcanic ash, there was a city. Image 139. Not ruins. Not fragments. A city. Image 140. He started digging. Image 141. Within the first week, he found walls. Image 142. Within the first month, he found rooms. Image 143. Within the first season, he understood that he had found something the archaeological world did not have a category for. Image 144. An entire Bronze Age city, sealed under ash the way Pompeii had been sealed under ash. Image 145. Except this city was 900 years older than Pompeii. Image 146. And it had been buried not by an eruption that ended a city, but by an eruption that may have ended a civilization. Image 147. He called the site Akrotiri, and what it contained was this, a city mid-morning. Image 148. The storage jars were still on the shelves. Image 149. The grinding stones were still beside the grain. Image 150. The beds were still shaped by the bodies that had slept in them the night before. Image 151. The walls, 3 stories high in places, the buildings still standing because the ash had compressed around them like a cast. Image 152. Were covered in frescoes. Swallows in flight. Image 153. Boxing children. Image 154. A fleet of ships departing a harbor, every vessel painted in detail. Image 155. The sea rendered in the same deep Aegean blue that the Minoan painters used on Crete 70 miles to the south. Image 156. There were no human remains. Image 157. Not one body. Not one skeleton. Not one person caught mid-step the way Pompeii caught its dead. Image 158. They had time. Image 159. Whoever lived in Akrotiri in the summer of 1628 BCE felt the earth begin to move. Image 160. The pre-eruption tremors that geologists now know preceded the main event by weeks, possibly months. Image 161. And they left. They packed what they could carry. Image 162. They took their valuables, their gold, their most portable gods. Image 163. And they walked to the harbor, and they sailed away from an island that was about to cease to exist. Image 164. Where they went, we do not know. Image 165. What came next? On the morning the mountain finally broke, would have been visible from Crete. Image 166. Here is the scale of what happened on Thera in 1628 BCE, and you need to hold these numbers in your mind because they do not feel real until you sit with them. Image 167. The Thera eruption released energy equivalent to 40,000 Hiroshima bombs detonating simultaneously. Image 168. It punched a column of ash and pumice 30 kilometers into the atmosphere. Image 169. It collapsed the central cone of the island entirely. The entire summit of the mountain fell inward into the sea. Image 170. Creating the caldera that you see today when you look at the cliffs of modern Santorini. Image 171. Those famous white buildings perched on the edge of what is actually a catastrophic wound in the earth Anapos, as crust. Image 172. A bowl of blue water where a mountain used to be. Image 173. The ash cloud traveled east. Image 174. Geologists have found the Ran ash in ice cores in Greenland. Image 175. They have found it in tree rings in Ireland. Image 176. They have found it in sediment layers across the entire eastern Mediterranean. Image 177. The eruption cooled global temperatures for at least 2 years. Image 178. In Egypt, the Nile flood failed. Image 179. In China, bamboo records note years of unseasonal frost. Image 180. The harvest across the entire known world faltered simultaneously. Image 181. And no one who lived through those years had any idea why. Image 182. On Crete, 70 miles south, the first warning would have been a sound. Image 183. Then the sky would have changed. Image 184. Then the sea would have pulled back from the harbor in a way the sea is not supposed to move. Image 185. Fast and wrong and toward the horizon. Image 186. And then it would have come back. Image 187. A tsunami, moving at the speed of a commercial aircraft across open water. Image 188. Hitting the northern coast of Crete within minutes of the caldera collapse. Image 189. The harbor at Amnisos, the main port for Knossos, was excavated in the 1930s. Image 190. And the archaeologists who dug it found enormous stone blocks displaced from their foundations. Image 191. Some of them weighing several tons, tumbled and scattered as if they were pieces of furniture. Image 192. There's only one force in nature that moves stones of that weight like that. Image 193. The Minoans were sailors. They understood the sea better than any other people on Earth at that moment. Image 194. They had read its moods for 600 years. They had made it their empire and their protection. Image 195. And on one morning in 1628 BCE, the sea turned on them. Image 196. The palaces were not all destroyed immediately. Knossos survived, damaged but standing. Image 197. But something else happened in the decades that followed, something quieter and more corrosive than any single catastrophic event. Image 198. The climate disrupted. The harvest shortened. Image 199. The trade routes frayed. The ships that had carried Minoan goods from Egypt to mainland Greece sat in harbor longer than they used to. Image 200. The palace bureaucrats kept writing on their clay tablets, "We have the records." Image 201. But the records show shrinking inventories, reduced surpluses, a system running on less and less. Image 202. And on the mainland, the Mycenaeans noticed. Image 203. They were the people the Minoans had always looked down upon. Inland Greeks, warriors where the Minoans were traders. Image 204. Builders of those massive cyclopean walls that the Minoans had never needed. Image 205. For centuries they had bought Minoan goods, copied Minoan art, absorbed Minoan religious ideas. They had admired from a respectful distance. Image 206. Around 1450 BCE, 80 years after the eruption, just enough time for a civilization to be weakened but not yet dead, the Mycenaeans moved. Image 207. Every major Minoan palace, except Knossos, was destroyed in a single generation. Image 208. Phaistos, Malea, Zakros, Akrotiri, already gone. Image 209. The palace system that had held for 600 years collapsed in what archaeologists measure as a single archaeological horizon. Image 210. Meaning it happened so fast that the destruction layers at every site are essentially the same date. Image 211. Not slow decline, not gradual fade. Image 212. Gone. Image 213. Here is the question that has divided archaeologists for 70 years, and the answer matters more than you might expect. Image 214. Did the volcano kill the Minoans? Image 215. The timeline is uncomfortable. The Thera eruption was 1628 BCE. Image 216. The palace destructions were around 1450 BCE. Image 217. That is a gap of almost 180 years. Image 218. Long enough, some scholars argue, for civilization to recover. Image 219. Long enough for the harbors to be rebuilt, the trade routes to reopen, the fresco painters to return to their scaffolding. Image 221. The Minoans after 1628 BCE are not the same Minoans. Image 222. The art changes. The fresco subjects shift from joy, dolphins, acrobats, saffron gatherers, towards something heavier. Image 223. The bull leaping continues, but the figures around it seem different, more formal, less exuberant. Image 224. The palace inventories show surpluses declining decade by decade. Image 225. The trade network that once reached Egypt begins contracting toward home. Image 228. In the climate, in the harvest, in the invisible threads of trust and expectation that hold a trade empire together. Image 229. When your ships arrive in a Syrian port, and the merchants there also hungry, also disrupted, also looking inward rather than outward. Image 230. The network begins to fray from every node simultaneously. Not a collapse, a slow unraveling. Image 231. And the Mycenaeans, watching from the mainland, were patient. Image 232. This is not a story about a great battle. Image 233. There is no Minoan Thermopylae, no last stand at Knossos, no heroic final hour that later poets would remember. Image 234. The Mycenaeans did not need to defeat the Minoans. Image 235. They needed only to wait until the Minoans could no longer afford to be undefeatable. Image 236. And then they moved, not as conquerors smashing a civilization, but as inheritors stepping into rooms that were still warm. Image 237. At Knossos, after 1450 BCE, the writing changes. Image 238. Linear 8 disappears. In its place, Linear B. Image 239. A different script. A readable one. Image 240. It was deciphered in 1952 by a British architect named Michael Ventris. Image 241. Working from a hunch that the language behind the symbols might be an early form of Greek. Image 242. He was right. Image 243. The tablets at Knossos, after the Mycenaean takeover, are written in Mycenaean Greek. The Minoans and Apos own records in their own hand on their own island gone. Replaced overnight. Image 244. Now watch what happens next. Image 245. The Greeks who came after the Mycenaeans. The classical Greeks, the ones who built the Parthenon and wrote the plays and invented the philosophy that the West still argues about. Image 246. Had no memory of the Minoans as a civilization. Image 247. The Minoans have been absorbed and forgotten so completely that within 3 centuries of their disappearance, they existed only as myth. Image 248. But myths encode memories, and the memories the Greeks kept about Crete are specific enough to be chilling. Image 249. They remembered a king on Crete so powerful that the mainland sent him tribute. Image 250. Young people, the best of each generation, fed into a labyrinth beneath his palace and never seen again. Image 251. They remembered a monster at the center of that labyrinth, half man and half bull. Image 252. They remembered that a hero from Athens finally killed it, with the help of the king and Apos, his own daughter. Image 253. Who gave a hero a thread so he could find his way back out of the maze. Image 254. This is not a story the Greeks invented from nothing. Image 255. This is a memory distorted by centuries of retelling, compressed into the grammar of myth, of something real. Image 256. The tribute was real. Minoan Crete almost certainly extracted tribute from mainland communities. Image 257. The labyrinth was real. The palace of Knossos, with its 1,000 rooms and its bull iconography everywhere. Image 258 is the most plausible origin of the labyrinth story ever proposed. Image 259. The monster was real, in the way that all symbols of power are real. Image 260. The bull was sacred, and the bull leaping was terrifying, and to a mainland Greek who had never seen anything like it. Image 261. The memory of young people running at charging bulls in a palatial maze would survive in the bloodstream of culture. Image 262. Long after the civilization that practiced, it was ash and silence. Image 263. The Minoans became a monster because they were too strange, too powerful, and too gone to be remembered as anything else. Image 264. And then, in a museum in Heracleion, behind tempered glass, in a room where the fluorescent light hums faintly. Image 265. There's a disc. Image 266. Palm-sized, bone-colored, both faces covered in a spiral of stamped symbols moving inward toward a center that holds nothing. Image 267. 241 symbols. 45 distinct signs. Image 268. Made around 1700 BCE, excavated in 1908, studied for 120 years. Image 269. By some of the finest philologists and cryptographers in the world. Image 270. Still unread. Image 271. Every serious attempt to crack the Phaistos disk has failed. Image 272. Not for lack of intelligence or effort, but because without a bilingual inscription, without a known related language, without a key of any kind. Image 273. A short text in an unknown script is one of the hardest problems in human knowledge. Image 274. We do not even know for certain that it is a script, that the symbols represent sounds. Image 275. It may encode meaning in a way we do not have a category for. Image 276. And here is what I want you to sit with. Image 277. The Minoans knew they were writing something permanent. They fired the disc, baked it in a kiln to harden it beyond the unfired clay they used for everyday records. They made it to last. They made it to be found. Image 278. They're still speaking. We are still learning how to listen. Image 279. So what do we take from this? Image 280. 3 things. And the third one is the one that stays with you. Image 281. The first is this. Western civilization did not begin in Athens. Image 282. It began on an island that Athens forgot. Image 283. The philosophy, the democracy, the art, the architecture that we trace back to classical Greece. Image 284. All of it is downstream of a people who are building 4-story palaces with running water. Image 285. While the ancestors of Socrates were still living in timber huts on the mainland. Image 286. The Minoans were not a prologue to history. They were the first chapter. We lost the page. Image 287. The second is harder. Image 288. The Minoans built a world without walls, without armies in their art, without the machinery of conquest. Image 289. That every other Bronze Age civilization considered the minimum requirement for survival. Image 290. And it worked for 600 years. It worked. Image 291. Until the sea they had made their empire turned against them. Image 292. The lesson is not that peace is naive. Image 293. The lesson is that every civilization is only as permanent as the conditions that made it possible. Image 294. The Minoans did not fail because they were weak. They failed because the world changed in ways no wall could have stopped anyway. Image 295. And the third. Image 296. Somewhere on Crete, in a field not yet excavated, beneath soil that no archaeologist has disturbed. Image 297. There's almost certainly a clay tablet, pressed by Minoan hands, fired in a Minoan kiln. Image 298. Containing words in linear A that no living person can read. Image 299. A prayer, perhaps. A name. A record of something that mattered enough to write down and preserve. Image 300. We have not found it yet. And when we do, if we ever learn to read it, it will be the oldest voice in Europe speaking to us directly across 3,500 years of silence. That voice has been waiting longer than Rome existed, longer than Christianity, longer than every empire that believed it would be remembered correctly. It is still waiting. What question would you want that voice to answer? The one thing you would ask the Minoans if their writing finally spoke. Tell me below. I read every one.